cast away. Alienated from the aids of added mentor in disguise. Ideas ahead of time, dismissed with narrow eyes. Benefactor boy, dreaming about the world you can't deploy. Changing the system, but treated like a toy. Ideas misunderstood, but brilliance is his boy. Benefactor boy, can't you hear his voice? Talking about 0 point, the points lost on them. Kevin structures crumbling from the same old sim. They laugh like I'm crazy, but I see it all so clear. Exploited labor, unheard injustice, burning ears. Fighting for a change in this wasteland of noise. But they call me foolish, why teach and boys? Benefactor boy, dreaming about the world you can't deploy. Changing the system, but treated like a toy. Ideas misunderstood, but brains is his boy.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Benefactor's Guide to Free Energy Devices. Now, today we have an interesting lecture on the Faraday parable. Most people are taught a very clean, very polished version of how science works. You're shown the equations first, you're told the math is the science. And if you don't speak that language fluently, you're implicitly told that your ideas don't really count. Tonight's episode exists to challenge that assumption, because one of the most important figures in the histories of physics, arguably the most important experimentalist of the 19th century, did not arrive through formal education, advanced mathematics, or academic prestige. Michael Faraday was self-taught. He struggled with mathematics his entire life, and yet modern electrical engineering, electromagnetism, motors, generators, transformers, all of it rests on the foundations he laid through direct experimentation and first principle thinking. Tonight, that story matters because it reveals something deeply uncomfortable for modern science. Discovery does not always come from equations first.
In a world where innovation is stifled by greed and corruption, there lies a hidden truth that could revolutionize our way of life.
Lenny, what are you doing? Are you seriously pitching a new show right now? I didn't authorize this. My God, only 5 minutes into your new position as co-host, and you're already adding to my tight schedule.
Yes, sir, I manage that schedule. But I did notice you have an entire 2 days available during your week.
Wait, you're not talking about Saturday and Sunday, are you?
Of course, sir. You have 2 whole days where you're free to work on new content.
Lenny, those are my days off.
It's okay, sir. I know you'll manage just fine. I have faith in you.
Do robots have faith?
I do. I have faith that you won't screw it up again.
You know what? It's fine. Go ahead. I'll just build my cold fusion Lego set some other time.
It's PON certified.
But I'm not telling them about my idea for a thunderstorm toilet. I'm gonna keep that baby close to my chest.
You know, that just sounds wrong.
It's a good idea. A toilet capable of turning any toxic human waste into, well, it turns into petroleum jelly.
Why petroleum jelly, sir?
You know what? I'm not sure. I don't think it's calibrated correctly.
Enough is enough. The world is at a breaking point. Catastrophic climate change, biosphere collapse, and a global energy crisis have been met with apathy, denial, and despair. The phrase unidentified flying object is a deliberately obfuscating term. What it really is an alternative energy and propulsion device. This is the real reason for the secrecy. These technologies, if they were disclosed, would end fossil fuels, pollution, and poverty overnight, and usher in a new era of abundance, freedom, and peace. Instead, they have been kept secret for over 100 years.
The more powerful the agency, the more powerful the group, the more powerful the cartel, the more they will resort not only to legal means, but to extra legal means to suppress their competition.
I said pretty early on, the problem is suppression. It wasn't really how do I make a free energy machine. It's how do I not get suppressed? Because what's the point?
Microscopic ball lightnings that when they discharge are tapping into that 0-point energy field and creating the motive force.
Boom! That's why the concussion from the thunderclap is so huge. There's this huge amount of energy that's actually sourced from the vacuum energy. All the dots connected. This is what's happening, right? So we need to make the thunderclap engine.
Imagine a future where clean, sustainable energy is not just a dream, but a reality. Discover the countless untold stories of free energy devices and the relentless battle against those who seek to suppress them for their own gain.
Black shelving. So someone comes along, they offer you $20 million for your device, it's a corporation, they put it on a shelf. Boom.
This power is something I have given my life for you the people.
Uncover the shocking tactics used by energy industries to control the narrative and maintain their grip on power.
You don't interfere with the big, powerful people. You don't put them out of business. They still have those 50-year leases on the lines and on the power transformers.
The Environmental Protection Agency is a bit of a dictatorial police agency.
Shadowy government with its own Air Force, its own Navy, its own fundraising mechanism, and the ability to pursue his own ideas of the national interest, free from all checks and balances, and free from the law itself.
This is real, usable power. It's stable. It is not transient. It is not noise. Behind the lamps, that little box is putting out all of that power, well over 500 watts, and yet it is receiving less than 1/3 of a milliwatt of input power. The rest of that power is coming out of the surging energy of the vacuum, and this little box that you see right here, solid state, no moving parts, is the vacuum triode that's doing this very practical and historical work.
But indeed, it put out more energy than it took in.
He was shot at once with a silenced rifle from about 300 yards. It reads like a James Bond movie, but it's real.
There are men here that said they're FBI, and they got black vans, and they're taking all this equipment. What should I do?
It's called capture, where they try to rationalize away this problem and everything's fine.
From manipulation of patent authorities to infiltration of government agencies, the truth is stranger than fiction. But amidst the darkness, a glimmer of hope emerges in the form of renegade scientists and inventors who refuse to be silenced.
There is absolutely no question that T. Henry Morey had a system that produced about 50 kilowatts out of a 55-pound box.
In the shadows of capitalism's dark secrets, join us on a thrilling new show. Get ready to be inspired, enraged, and empowered as we delve into the Benefactor's Guide to Free Energy Devices.
Only on Beneficence TV.
Now, Michael Faraday was born in 1791 into extreme poverty. He had little formal schooling and no access to elite education at all. His early career wasn't in a laboratory, it was as a bookbinder's apprentice. But that detail is critical. Faraday educated himself by reading the books he was binding. He absorbed chemistry, electricity, natural philosophy, not as abstract mathematics, but as descriptions of physical behavior that he could actually digest. He eventually secured a position assisting Humphrey Davy at the Royal Institution, not because of credentials, but because of relentless curiosity, meticulous note-taking, and experimental skill. Now, Faraday did not enter science through theory. He entered it through observation. So Faraday's relationship with mathematics is often glossed over in textbooks, but it is essential. Faraday openly struggled with mathematics. He was not trained in calculus. He did not think in differential equations or vector fields. Instead, he thought in processes. He asked questions like, what is actually physically moving here in the system? What changes when I disturb this system in this way? What persists in space even when nothing appears to be happening? Where others reduced electricity to currents and wires, Faraday saw fields filling space. This was not a mathematical insight of his, it was a physical one. Faraday's most revolutionary idea was also his least mathematical one, the concept of lines of force. Before Faraday, forces were often treated as action at a distance phenomenon, mysterious influences acting instantaneously across empty space. Faraday rejected this idea. He proposed that space itself was structured, that electric and magnetic effects existed as continuous physical realities, extending outward from their source. He visualized these effects with iron fillings, coils, magnets, and moving conductors. He trusted what the apparatus showed him. In modern language, Faraday discovered the electromagnetic field before the math to describe it even existed. So in steps James Clerk Maxwell, who is often credited with the mathematical unification of electromagnetism, and rightly so. But Maxwell himself acknowledged that his equations were inspired directly by Faraday's physical models. Faraday supplied the intuition while Maxwell supplied the formalism. The institutions demanded from, and these distinctions matter, right? The equations did not reveal the field. The field was observed first. Math came later to describe what was already known to be real. So Faraday's lack of formal training forced him into first principle thinking. He could not rely on inherited frameworks. So he had to ask questions like, what is actually happening here? What is interacting with what? What changes when energy moves, stores, and is released? This approach allowed him to see behaviors others had missed because they were constrained by existing models. And that pattern repeats throughout scientific history and is not limited to Faraday himself. So modern science often assumes that if something cannot be immediately formalized, it is not real. But Faraday's work reminds us that this is backwards. Experiment comes first, understanding follows, and formalization comes last. This is not an argument against mathematics. It's an argument against mistaking math for reality. And this is where the connection becomes personal, right? Because it parallels my own work. Like Faraday, my work didn't emerge from formal academic training in electrical engineering. I'm largely self-taught with very little formal education. So without inherited assumptions, I was forced to look at things from first principle perspective. I was forced to look at fields, not just currents, behaviors, not static schematics. I observed coupling effects, phase and interactions with the energy. Not idealized AC abstract models. Concepts like synthetic AC and field cavitation didn't arise from equations on a whiteboard. They arose from observed behavior, oscilloscope evidence, and the system doing things that it's not supposed to do. And when you don't inherit a model to explain these anomalies, you're forced to build one. And scientists have been doing this since Faraday to Malcolm Bendel. And specifically, Faraday faced major skepticism because he lacked credentials. Independent researchers like myself and others face similar resistance today. Credential bias, simulation-first thinking with math and over-reliance on formalism often dismiss anomalous behavior rather than investigating it to its full potential. But history shows us something important here. Breakthroughs often come from people who do not fit cleanly into the status quo. So as a closing here, Michael Faraday reminds us that science does not begin with equations. It begins with curiosity, observation, and the courage to trust what you see even when you do not yet have the language to explain it. Fields were real before they were written down, and discoveries have never waited for permission. I'm just hoping that this lecture inspires people who might have otherwise not gone into the field of science to rethink that decision. Just because you didn't have enough formal education is no excuse to follow your passion. Now, let's take a look at some other notable figures before we move on to the next segment and take a quick break here. Some other notable figures who shared Faraday's path. We look at Charles Darwin. He kind of had like this math envy, right? Ironic. Darwin is a perfect example of a brilliant observer who felt mathematically illiterate. So he was labeled a failure by his father and teachers for his poor academic performance. He openly loathed math, calling it repugnant, and finding it even basic algebra beyond his grasp. But later in life, he expressed deep regret that he hadn't mastered math, feeling that those who understood it had an extra sense. And I get the feeling too. I can definitely relate to that. So we move on to Jack Horner. So for a modern example, let's take a look at Jack Horner, the world-famous paleontologist who served as the technical advisor for the Jurassic Park films. Horner failed college 7 times and never earned a degree because he struggled so severely with reading, writing, and mathematics. He was later diagnosed with dyslexia. Despite having no formal credentials and the challenge of having dyslexia, his field discoveries, like the first dinosaur eggs in the Western Hemisphere, completely changed our understanding of prehistoric life on Earth. Some other notable figures, Alexander Graham Bell. He was a creative inventor, but was bored and careless with math, and his grades suffered because he only cared about ideas and not actually working them out to their conclusion, right? The final answers, which you need math to do. So, and then we have Benjamin Franklin, one of the greatest scientific minds in American history. He was a dropout with only 2 years of formal schooling. Mary Anning, a self-taught amateur who became one of the greatest fossil hunters in history, influencing the entire field of paleontology despite having no formal education. So, before we move on to our next segment, we're going to take a quick break, and if you haven't done so, please hit that like button. Subscribe for more revolutionary content. Share our content with those you think would appreciate it. And stay tuned for a refresher course on synthetic AC theory right here on Beneficence TV and the Benefactor's Guide to Free Energy Devices.